What is up? GoodMicWork back at you with episode 431. Pretty simple episode this week. I'm just going to review the May 29th and 30th editions of Raw and SmackDown, and I'm also going to predict the entire Extreme Rules pay-per-view card coming to us this Sunday on the WWE Network. Aside from that, I probably won't get into too much else. There's a couple of other news items I do want to touch on, but for the most part, that's all you're going to hear in this episode. Extremely busy week for me this week, and I don't really have a whole lot of time to put this commentary together, so I need to bust it out and get it to you. And move on with some of my other projects. As most of you know, I am working on a Q&A currently. That'll be up in about 2 weeks maybe. I'm pretty much done selecting questions for that, but if you want to throw one at me at last minute just for the hell of it, go ahead, send it to goodmicwork@gmail.com. Please include your name and where you're from, and who knows, maybe you'll make it in at the last minute. Before we get started, just a quick reminder to please subscribe to my channel and please like this video. My likes have been down a little bit lately, so I'm trying to build those back up, so if you guys can hook me up with a like and a positive review or whatever, that would be very much appreciated. Visit my website, goodmicworkcommentaries.com. You can check out this YouTube video over there, or you can download an MP3 of this episode. You can also find me on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. And of course, for all my latest opinions, if any news breaks before I get a commentary up on it, follow me on Twitter at GoodMicWork. I always have something to say on that site, and please like my Facebook page as well. Why don't we jump right into Raw first? Raw came to us on Memorial Day. I was actually not home to see the show live. I was out doing Memorial Day stuff. I was hanging out with friends. I found myself at the beach. I actually wasn't able to watch the show until late Tuesday night. I watched Raw and SmackDown back to back, and boy, oh boy, were you guys telling me about a couple of things on Raw that I needed to check out, specifically the This Is Your Life segment, which I will definitely talk about here in just a little bit. I didn't really think Raw was a horrible show. I mean, despite that horrible segment, overall, the show didn't bother me too much. I thought the main event was good. I thought we had some good mid-card matches, and we had some decent stuff on there. So, you know, if you take away the This Is Your Life segment, I don't know if I would give this show a bad grade. We opened up with a Miz TV segment. His guests are Sheamus and Cesaro, and Sheamus gets on the mic and starts talking about how all the fans turned their backs on his friend Cesaro, who was a babyface, and when the Hardys came back, they all forgot all about him. And now they are a pissed-off, evil heel team that are determined to take down the Hardy Boys and take their tag team titles away from them. The Miz then starts going off on a rant on Dean Ambrose, which prompts Dean to come out and interrupt, and he says he's going to go in there and shut their mouths, but they're laughing. There's three of us, there's only one of you, and of course that means that Dean has brought some backup with him in the form of the tag team champion Hardy Boys, and of course, as usual, we've got a six-man impromptu tag team match, typical shit that takes place in a segment like this. And Matt and Jeff Hardy's unbelievable undefeated streak continues. These guys are absolutely unstoppable. They win yet again, which I think it's kind of odd why Sheamus and Cesaro are even getting a title shot at this point, considering the fact that they're losing every single week on TV. Whether it's a tag team match against the Hardy Boys, whether it's a singles match against one of them, or whether it's a six-man match like this, they lose every single time. And the Hardys and Dean Ambrose defeated Sheamus and Cesaro and The Miz. Hardy hit the Swanton Bomb on The Miz for the win. And of course, the Hardy Boys are taking on Sheamus and Cesaro in a cage match at Extreme Rules, and The Miz is taking on Dean Ambrose in a match where the stip is if Dean gets DQ'd, he loses the title, or whatever the fuck. So, I'll get into my predictions later, but as far as the Hardys and Sheamus and Cesaro go, you know, how much longer can Sheamus and Cesaro continue to lose? At some point, the Hardy Boys have got to lose somewhere, so I'm wondering if WWE is just stalling, just killing some time until they figure out what the hell's going on with this broken gimmick drama that's going on between the Hardy Boys and Anthem. Both sides are starting to release some documentation now, and WWE clearly is still holding out hope because they're not telling Matt to stop teasing stuff. He's still got that crazy look on his face, he's still got the yellow streak in his hair, he uses some of the words that Broken Matt used, so I think WWE is hoping that this will happen someday in the future. And man, he can have some great feuds. I was looking at their tag team partner on Raw, Dean Ambrose. Holy shit. Crazy-ass Dean versus Broken Matt, that would be a lot of fun. Broken Matt versus Bray Wyatt, that would be a lot of fun. So there's a lot of potential there if WWE can actually get their hands on these broken characters. As of right now, they're not. But I have a feeling that they are still holding out hope that despite all of this bad blood and negative feelings and the circus that this thing has become, I still think that they think that in the future they can get their hands on these gimmicks and use them. So let's keep our fingers crossed that that actually happens. The two big matches that we had on Raw were advertised, I think, either last week or in the middle of the week, and that, of course, was Samoa Joe taking on Finn Balor and Bray Wyatt in a triple threat match. Samoa Joe gets the victory in that when he throws Finn Balor out of the ring after he hits the coup de grace on Bray Wyatt and scores the pin. So I was actually happy to see Samoa Joe get the victory there. In the main event, this was a match. Now, if I would have been home to live tweet, I would have been able to get a better idea of what the fans thought of this. But I can imagine they weren't happy. Roman Reigns defeated Seth Rollins completely clean in the main event in a match that I thought was really good. You know, this is the thing. This is what sucks about wrestling today, is because a Roman victory can ruin a good match in the eyes of the fans. To me, it won't ruin the match. I thought the match was good despite the long rivalry between these two, despite how many times we've seen them in the ring together. I was still pretty into their match. I watched pretty much the whole thing, even though I didn't watch Raw live. When I watched the replay, I didn't fast forward through anything. I watched the entire match. It was good. Good spots in there too. That unbelievable frog splash by Seth Rollins. It looked like he got 30 feet up in the air coming down on Roman Reigns, and that actually set up the finish. The match ended right after that. Roman, I think, won this when he countered Seth's attempt to hit his new finisher, that knee to the face thing, and then nailed Seth with a pretty devastating spear and got the pin in the end and won the match. And of course, I know the fans are going to hate the fact that Roman won, but what that tells me is that he's not winning the match at Extreme Rules. And right now, I'm actually picking the loser of this match to win at Extreme Rules. And I think Seth Rollins might win and get that match against Brock Lesnar at Great Balls of Fire. And I'll explain why here in just a little bit. We had an interesting little tease and an interesting little segment on Monday Night Raw as well that I really, really liked between Corey Graves and Kurt Angle. Now, I think it was right after the first match, they cut to the announce table and Booker T and Cole and Graves are there and Cole is talking and Corey Graves is preoccupied on his phone the whole time. He's not even paying attention. Michael Cole asks him a question and he ignores him and just gets up from his chair and walks away after looking at his phone, very concerned. It was really interesting and you're like, what the fuck? I mean, it was played off really well. For a split second, you might have thought that it was serious. And of course, they go to a commercial break, they come back, and Corey Graves is in the backstage area with Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle is reading whatever Corey Graves was reading on the phone, and he's got this very concerned look on his face. And whoever wrote this was saying that Kurt Angle is a disgrace to Raw and a disgrace to the Olympic gold medals and all of this. And he says, oh my God, where did you get this? This could ruin me. And Corey Graves says, hey, people tell me things. I don't know why. I just wanted to give you a heads up. I like you as the general manager, and I thought you should know this. And the segment ends. So that gets the speculation running wild as to what this could actually be. Now, the early rumors as to what this could be regarding could be a way to get Kurt Angle back in the ring. And one of the first things I heard was Triple H. And to me, that makes a lot of sense because if Kurt Angle is, you know, if it's a little bit iffy, if he should be in there, he's still got to pass physicals and stuff like that. And plus, he's a lot older now. He's plagued with injuries and they don't know what kind of ring shape he's really in. I mean, he's been working on the independents and internationally a little bit in the last year, but WWE might be a little hesitant to put him in the ring. So if they do, what better guy to put him in the ring with than somebody that is a major part of the WWE and I don't know, maybe can protect him a little bit better, or maybe Triple H is the only guy WWE feels comfortable with Kurt Angle wrestling. So maybe this could all be a way to set up some sort of a Kurt Angle and Triple H match, maybe even as early as SummerSlam. I mean, to me, this reminds me of Brock Lesnar. If it does turn out to be Triple H behind this, or if it turns out to be Stephanie, I've heard some Stephanie rumors as well. She hasn't been seen on TV since WrestleMania. If she's the one coming out and saying these things about Kurt Angle, that could still lead to a match between Kurt Angle and Triple H, and maybe they could do what Triple H did with Brock back in 2012 and 13. He worked with him at SummerSlam, and then they had a rematch at WrestleMania. So, you know, Kurt Angle coming back to the WWE, there's a lot of guys I would like to see him in the ring with. Triple H is really not one of them. Yes, they have a long storied rivalry. They go way back. I enjoyed their matches back in 2001 and 2000 and all of the other times they faced back in the Attitude Era. But now in 2017, I'd like to see Kurt Angle in there with some other guys. I'd like to see Kurt Angle work with Seth Rollins or Finn Balor or Samoa Joe or Brock Lesnar even. Guys like that. Triple H, I don't know. But still, it would be good for the fans to see Kurt back in the ring in the WWE regardless of who his opponent is. So I don't want to complain about it too much. If we see Kurt back in the ring again one day in WWE, I mean, that's something I'm going to mark out for, even if his opponent is somebody that I'm really not interested in seeing him wrestle. But, you know, right now, those are the early rumors. Now, I like the fact that WWE keeps you guessing with this. I hope they don't give us too much information too quick. Let the fans speculate. Let them wonder who this might be. Right now, all arrows are pointing to Triple H or Stephanie because why would Kurt Angle care so much about what somebody else said? Why would he say, if this gets out, it could ruin me? If it's just some random person, Kurt Angle shouldn't give a shit what anybody thinks of him. He's the GM. He's in charge. Nobody is his boss other than Triple H or Stephanie or Vince McMahon or somebody like that. But at this point, you got to think it could be a way to get Kurt back in the ring in the future. And if they need another big match for SummerSlam, if they're starting to get their plans together, Kurt Angle returning to the ring to take on Triple H could be that big match that they need for that pay-per-view. So I'm interested to hear what all of you have to say. Leave it in the comments below. What sort of scenario do you envision in your mind? Who do you think is behind these texts, and who do you think is out to get Kurt Angle, and will this lead to him return to the ring sometime in the future? Right now, I kind of think that it will. Speaking of Corey Graves, he was very busy on Monday Night Raw. He was also confronted by Cass at the announce table, I think later on, and Cass was pissed off at him for insinuating that maybe he had something to do with Enzo getting attacked. Now, I didn't see what Corey Graves said because I was skipping through Raw a little bit, so I'm not sure what specifically Cass was pissed about, but he came right out there to the announce table and got in Corey Graves' face and was very pissed off. And then sure enough, later on, Enzo got attacked again. Doctors and medical staff are standing over trying to revive a beaten up Enzo for the second week in a row. Cass is there all pissed off, insisting that it's the Revival. The Revival even had an interview on Monday Night Raw. They're back. Poor Dash's jaw is still wired shut, but they are set to return to the ring pretty soon, and they are now back on TV. They did an interview insisting that they had nothing to do with Enzo being laid out. They said they haven't even been at Raw in weeks, and then Charlie, the little interviewer, was like, hey, you were here last week because we caught you on camera during Sasha Banks' interview, walking down a hallway in the backstage area, and they even showed a video of that clip from last week that I mentioned last week in my commentary, that I thought it could be the Revival because they were shown on camera. And then they were like, well, of course we got to be here. We do work here. We just haven't been in the ring. And they tried to backpedal and everything. And WWE is really trying to make you think or keep you guessing as to who it was that beat up Enzo. But now all of the arrows are pointing to Cass. It's almost becoming too obvious now. He's never around when Enzo gets beat up. He's always the one that quote unquote finds him. And Kurt Angle is back there again, telling Cass to calm down and says, you need to chill out. And Cass is like, this was the Revival, goddammit. You got to do something about this. And just making it really obvious that they might be moving towards a heel turn here. And I hope that they are. Although it could be a double swerve. Maybe WWE will make the fans think that it's going to be Cass, and then it turns out to be the Revival the whole time. And then Cass is like, I told you I'd never hurt my brother. I'd never beat up my friend. And all you fans didn't believe me or whatever. They could do an angle like that, but I've always been a big fan of Cass. I love his look. He reminds me a lot of a Giant Edge. He just has that look to him. He's got that long hair. He even facially resembles Edge a little bit. And I think they could have a lot of fun with Cass if they package him up into a fun singles type of gimmick and get rid of all that soft bullshit and all that crap. I think Cass can be a big player in the WWE, and I think the WWE sees it too, and they're ready to split these guys up. They've been on the roster now for over a year. The Hardy Boys are back. They're the top babyface tag team on Raw. The Enzo and Cass thing is just getting a little bit old, and I think that they're, wasting a great talent in Cass, keeping him in this tag team for too long. So this is not something Cass can do forever. Eventually, this team is going to have to break up. I would love to see it happen right now. Have Cass turn into a big, vicious, nasty, dirty heel. I said that from the day they arrived on the main roster, that one day Cass is going to murder Enzo. So it looks like they're probably going in that direction, unless the WWE is making it so obvious to the fans that they're just going to double swerve us or something like that. That would be fun. As long as whatever happens here, whatever the payoff is, as long as it's surprising and good, I don't care. My only issue with it now is that if they are going to turn Cass heel, it's starting to become obvious, and even the dumbest of fans can probably see this coming. So WWE, I think, should have just been a little bit more subtle with this. Unless Cass is in cahoots with the Revival. Maybe he's paying them off to attack Enzo. Why don't you guys beat him up for me? I'm going to blame it on you, and I'm going to pretend I have nothing to do with it. And then in a tag team match between Enzo and Cass and the Revival, Cass turns, and Cass and the Revival, all three of them, beat the shit out of Enzo. I wouldn't mind seeing that either. So, I guess we'll find out probably pretty soon. I don't think these guys have a match scheduled at this point. As a matter of fact, they could add some matches to Extreme Rules, because when I predict this here later on, I only have 6 matches written down. And of course, I don't even think we have a kickoff match announced yet. So, I guess we could still get a match or two added before the pay-per-view on Sunday. Whether or not this match is one of those matches, I have no idea. It could potentially be Goldust versus R-Truth. We saw another great old-school Goldust promo on Raw. It was actually interrupted by an R-Truth promo. R-Truth kind of did the same thing, sitting in the director's chair, quoted a lot of Pulp Fiction, really funny stuff. So those two guys are on a collision course, and that's going to be Goldust's first opponent on this new push of his, and I'm sure he will dispose of R-Truth rather quickly so he can move on to another opponent in what seems to be his final run in the company here. So I'm really enjoying the old school Goldust promos and stuff, and I really hope they do something fun with Dustin, especially since he is so close to retiring, but we'll talk more about that next week. We also had the Drifter, Elias Sampson, beating a jobber this week, some local guy, and he came out there and sang again. And this was a better song this week than it was last week. I actually enjoyed his singing a little bit more this week. The fans were booing him, of course. And I think with the right storyline, with the right angle, with some decent material written for him, I think he can be a pretty decent star in the WWE. And if he ever makes it big, imagine how cool his special WrestleMania entrance would be one year. To have him in the ring, in the middle of the ring at WrestleMania singing something. And I don't know, there's all sorts of great shit they could probably do with him for a WrestleMania entrance. So if he ever became big enough on the roster to where they would do something special for him at WrestleMania, or if he has a one-on-one match with another major star, I would like to see what he does in front of 80,000 people. I think it would be pretty cool. So right now, I'm a fan of Elias Sampson. I think the Drifter gimmick is decent. I think it has potential, and I enjoy seeing him on TV, and he made complete mincemeat out of this poor jobber, beat the absolute fuck out of him. And I think if he's paired up with some decent opponents and some decent people in the future, he can make magic. So right now, I am on Team Drifter. I think the gimmick has potential, and I'm looking forward to what they do with him in the future. Hopefully, this thing is not a flop. We had a couple of cruiserweight matches. We had Austin Aries and Jack Gallagher beating TJP and Neville in a pretty good match. Neville tapped out. Whoa, that was big. Aries locked him in the last chancery, and Neville had no choice but to tap out. He was interviewed backstage about it later on. He seems pretty pissed off, and I thought that was a good way to set up their submission match. I kind of hope Neville keeps the belt again, and I hope he retains one more time, because I've said right from the beginning of his cruiserweight title reign that he should hold it for a long time, and I initially mentioned SummerSlam, and now it might actually turn out that he's going to hold that belt that long, especially since we just saw him tap out on Raw on Monday. So now maybe he's penciled in to be the favorite for the submission match at Extreme Rules. I actually hope that he is. We also had Rich Swann defeating Noam Dar. Alicia Fox and Sasha Banks were on the outside of the ring during that, and I think that has set up a mixed tag team match at Extreme Rules. I think we're going to get Swann and Sasha taking on Dar and Alicia, so whatever there. Titus O'Neil also beat Kalisto in a match and an angle with a Titus brand that I really have no interest in whatsoever, and I think that does it for the matches. That's all I have written down. The only other thing I'm going to talk about, of course, is the lovely This Is Your Life segment, probably one of the worst things we have ever seen on Monday Night Raw. And I was reading my Twitter on Monday when Raw was on, and a lot of you were tweeting me, oh my god, you got to see this shit. It was the worst thing ever. And that's the only bad thing about doing these commentaries, is that it forces me to watch stupid shit. Shit that I would never watch. Shit that I would never want to watch, especially when dozens of people are saying, don't watch it. It's the worst thing you've ever seen. But unfortunately, because of my YouTube channel, I have to watch it because I have to comment on it. And yep, it was awful. It was so bad. I mean, WWE, they do a lot of dumb skits. They do a lot of dumb in-ring stuff. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen a New Day promo on Raw that I thought was ridiculous and boring and poorly written and just really, really bad material. And this Alexa Bliss segment was, you cannot recreate the magic. I was in the crowd. I was there for This Is Your Life between The Rock and Mick Foley. I still think that's the highest rated Raw segment of all time. And I was proud to be there and see that live. That was so much fun. This was literally the polar opposite of that. Alexa Bliss is out there with a whole shrine or a whole display to Bayley, showing old pictures and yearbooks and trophies and Barbie dolls and shit like that. She brought out her 4th grade teacher. She brought out her best friend. She brought out her ex-boyfriend. They all said some things. The 4th grade teacher said that she would sit in the front row with her dad. Her dad attended class with her because she couldn't stop crying. Her best friend said people took advantage of her because she's so nice. This is when the fans really started to turn. They were chanting boring and this sucks and this this is stupid and all this other shit. The ex-boyfriend says a few words, and then he starts making out with the best friend. He says, the only reason I went out with Bayley is to get close to you. And then they start making out, and the fans are shitting on everything. It was just really bad. And Alexa Bliss, I mean, I guess she tried her best. I'm not going to blame too much of it on her, because you got to remember this was a script that she was given, that she had to read. And on top of that, she was in there with non-wrestling people that aren't used to being on camera. I guess they could have been actors or whatever, but, you know, it's a totally different thing to try to perform live in a ring on Raw, and you know, they just didn't have anything to them. The fans just didn't appreciate it. And plus, you didn't have somebody like The Rock that could cover up for that stuff, because when they did the first This Is Your Life, they brought out the girlfriend and they brought out a coach or whatever. Mick Foley was sending out all sorts of people in the clown, and a lot of that was dumb too, but the interaction between The Rock and Mick Foley made up for everything, and it was one of the greatest segments we've ever seen. Alexa was in there all by herself, dealing with these three people who probably didn't know how to react to the fans shitting all over what they were saying. So it was just a complete mess, really, really bad. I was cringing during the whole thing. It was just horrible to watch. It was absolute torture. Finally, Bayley's music hits, and mercifully this thing ends. She runs out there to attack Alexa. Alexa actually turns the tables on her, has a kendo stick hidden underneath the table, and beats the shit out of Bayley with it. So Bayley not only got humiliated in the This Is Your Life segment with her teacher and her boyfriend and her friend, Alexa then whips her ass with a kendo stick to end it. So I have a feeling Bayley might be getting that belt back at Extreme Rules, especially considering how she's been treated in the past few weeks on Monday Night Raw. But the This Is Your Life segment, if you're ever going to try to recreate something as wonderful as that, you need to put a little bit more thought into it, because this was absolutely awful, and definitely one of the worst things we've seen on Raw all year. So, you know, overall, I thought the show was okay. The This Is Your Life segment really ruined it. But, you know, as far as some of the matches we got, the decent main event, I'm going to give this show, you know, I don't know, maybe a C+ or something like that. So not horrible, but definitely not great. Let's go ahead and predict now the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. Now, I only have 6 matches written down. Like I said, I've got nothing written down for the kickoff. I wouldn't even be surprised if they throw one more match at us on the main card, maybe a filler or something like that. But here are the 6 matches I have written down. We've got Rich Swann and Sasha Banks taking on Noam Dar and Alicia Fox. That's a match I thought could be a kickoff match, but as of right now, I guess it's on the main card. I don't even know who would win that. I guess I'm going to pick Swann and Sasha, although they won on Raw, so I don't know. Part of me, you know what? Fuck it. Let's pick the heels. I'm picking Noam Dar and Alicia Fox to win that match. Why not? Submission match, we've got Neville taking on Austin Aries for the Cruiserweight title. Given what we saw on Raw, I'm going to pick Neville to retain. I'm going to pick him to continue rolling. I think a lot of people are expecting Austin Aries to win the Cruiserweight title, considering this long rivalry, but I think Neville is going to survive, and he's going to figure out a way to tap out Austin Aries and retain the title, and I hope that he does, because I predicted that he could hold that belt until SummerSlam, and if he winds up doing that, I think that can be good for Neville's character. He's such a badass. I was actually shocked to see him tap out on Raw, so given the fact that he tapped out on Raw, I seriously doubt after the run that he's been on that he's going to tap out twice within a week, so I'm picking him to retain. Alexa Bliss versus Bayley, of course, I just talked about that. Considering what we've seen Alexa do to Bayley in the past few weeks, I'm picking Bayley to regain the women's title, and I think she's going to beat Alexa Bliss in the kendo stick on a pole, proving that she can get extreme, because that's been the whole narrative throughout this feud, is that Bayley can't get extreme. She doesn't have a dark side. She can't get mean and nasty and vicious, and I think Bayley is going to prove that she can. Ironically, I'm picking a lot of title changes on the show. Certainly, I've got to be wrong about one of these, and this might be one of the ones I'm wrong about, but I've got to go with Sheamus and Cesaro. I mean, how many times can these guys continue to lose to the Hardy Boys? So I think Sheamus and Cesaro figure out a way to win the cage match against the Hardy Boys and win back the tag team titles. This is the match that if I would say I'm probably the most wrong about. I wouldn't be surprised if the Hardys won again. I mean, they've been unstoppable. They have not lost anything since being back in the WWE. I referenced the Survivor Series 2001 last week, where Jeff Hardy had the match won, climbed up all the way to the top of the cage, and decided to swanton one of the Dudley Boys onto the table, and he missed and crashed through the table, allowing the Dudleys to win and win the tag team title. So maybe they do a finish like that, where one of the Hardy Boys just fucks up. I'm a really big fan of Sheamus and Cesaro. I want to see them as tag team champions again. I like that tag team, but, you know, given what the WWE has been doing, holding out, trying to see where this broken Matt Hardy gimmick and drama winds up, and if they're going to be able to use the characters or not, maybe they're just in a holding pattern. Maybe they just want to keep the belts on the Hardy Boys until they figure this out. That's entirely possible. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if my prediction is wrong and we see Matt and Jeff retain the titles at Extreme Rules, but I'm still going to pick Sheamus and Cesaro. The Miz versus Dean Ambrose, picking a lot of heels. That's the only thing that worries me here, but I do think The Miz will regain the Intercontinental title. I don't know if he will necessarily win it in a DQ. I think that he might, considering that that is the stipulation. Maybe The Miz has some trick up his sleeve to get Dean Ambrose DQ'd and win the title in a really shady way. That would be a really good Miz type of thing to do, a really good heel type of thing to do. So I think The Miz, some way or another, winds up winning back the Intercontinental title. And as far as the big Fatal 5-Way, #1 contenders match between Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Bray Wyatt, Finn Balor, and Samoa Joe, I'm going Seth. I was going Finn. Finn's the guy I want. I love Finn Balor. I want him to get a title shot. I want him to be WWE Champion or Universal Champion again in the future, and I think he will. But considering everything that's going on between Finn Balor and Bray Wyatt, it looks like they might want to start their feud. That could be a really fun SummerSlam match or even a Great Balls of Fire match, I guess. Hopefully they can hold something like that off until SummerSlam and you can get Bray Wyatt, the Eater of Worlds, versus the Demon at SummerSlam. That would make for some pretty interesting entrances and a lot of interesting build leading up to that. So I guess I'm going to pick Seth Rollins. He's not my ideal pick because we've already seen Seth Rollins work with Brock Lesnar. As a matter of fact, we've already seen Seth Rollins work with Brock Lesnar at a July pay-per-view. So I think Finn Balor would be a much more fun opponent. Or maybe this could be some sort of a clusterfuck finish or a shady finish to where Kurt Angle winds up adding somebody to the match at Great Balls of Fire and we get a triple threat between Finn Balor, Brock Lesnar, and Seth Rollins. That's always an option, but I think Samoa Joe could be a really fun wild card if you had him win this thing and face Brock at Great Balls of Fire. That match would be extremely interesting. I think a lot of wrestling fans have been wanting to see that confrontation for a long time, but for some reason, I just don't see it happening. I wouldn't complain if it did, but in my mind, it's just not a direction that I think WWE is going to go. But at the end of the day, I'm going with Seth Rollins. I don't know why. That's just who I think WWE is going to have win this match. So we'll see how good I do. I've got only 2 babyfaces winning. I've got Seth Rollins, like I said, winning the #1 contenders match, and I've got Bayley winning back the women's title from Alexa Bliss. I've picked heels in every other match, so I know I'm going to be wrong on some of these, and I also know we're going to have some matches added, at least one match added to this card before Sunday. So I apologize for my incomplete predictions, but as I'm looking online, looking on WWE.com as of the recording of this commentary, I don't see anything other than these 6 matches announced for the pay-per-view. So there you go. Leave me all your thoughts on that in the comments below and what you think WWE's plans might be for Great Balls of Fire and SummerSlam. Let's move on to SmackDown now. I'll briefly touch on this show. I enjoyed SmackDown. I really enjoyed the main event. Dolph Ziggler versus AJ Styles, and Dolph won. Countered a phenomenal forearm by crotching AJ Styles on the top rope and then nailed him with a super kick and pinned him. So a lot of good momentum for Dolph Ziggler heading into Money in the Bank. I don't care if he beats AJ Styles on SmackDown or not. I do not see Dolph Ziggler winning the Money in the Bank, but I very much enjoyed the main event. We saw the show open with Kevin Owens doing a highlight reel, so I like the fact that he's taken over the highlight reel. Really makes you think that Chris Jericho will be back on TV at some point once his tour with Fozzy ends. I would like to see him interrupt and cost Kevin Owens the U.S. title at some point. Maybe Owens finally works with AJ Styles at the next pay-per-view, or maybe even at SummerSlam and Chris Jericho makes a surprise return, distracts Kevin Owens, and allows AJ Styles to beat him for the United States title. That could be a direction they're going in, since Kevin Owens is still rubbing the highlight reel in Chris Jericho's face. But Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura came out there along with Baron Corbin during that whole highlight reel opening segment, and that, of course, much like Raw, led to a tag team match with Sami and Shinsuke getting the victory. Shinsuke Nakamura pins Kevin Owens again after Owens and Baron Corbin could not get along. There was some pushing and shoving and a lot of dissension there. WWE's kind of teasing a program between those two as well, so I don't know which person is going to wind up taking the U.S. title off Kevin Owens. It looks like it's either going to be AJ Styles or Shinsuke Nakamura. Should be a lot of fun to see how this plays out. The Usos come out to cut a promo, and right in the middle of their promo, the New Day interrupts. So the New Day has finally arrived on SmackDown. The crowd popped pretty hard for that. And they got in the ring, they cut a promo on the Usos, and they told them that they were informed by Shane McMahon or whatever that they are going to be getting a tag team title shot against the Usos at Money in the Bank. So I feel like they're rushing this just a little bit. I thought the Usos could do some more with Breezango before they moved on to somebody else. And now that the New Day has finally arrived on TV, they're on TV for 3 minutes and they're already getting a title shot, just like Charlotte did with the women's title. So whatever they do at Money in the Bank, I kind of hope that the Usos retain the titles. I don't want to see the New Day win them just yet. I mean, they just fucking got there. I do think a New Day and Breezango feud would be fun, though. And Breezango had another skit. This was done kind of black and white with a somber tone. They even came out and had a match later on where they defeated the Colognes. So even with the Colognes, it looked like they were going to start gaining some momentum. They got a victory or two on SmackDown and started looking a little bit more serious, and they got rid of that whole stupid Shining Stars of Puerto Rico gimmick. And now they're right back to being jobbers again, and Breezango made pretty quick work of those two. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Breezango still finds a way to get another tag team title shot in the future, maybe in a triple threat with the Usos and New Day, or maybe against the New Day. I kind of think Breezango versus the New Day, if they ever did that, it would almost be too silly. What I really enjoyed about their program and their series of matches with the Usos is they combined a lot of fun, silly shit with good wrestling. I don't know if they would be able to do that with the New Day because the New Day is so goofy and crazy as well. But you've got multiple contenders now in the tag team division, and it's not just a two-team show like it is over on Monday Night Raw. So I guess that's good, but I still find Breezango incredibly entertaining, and I hope that they one day get their hands on the tag team titles. They have been cracking me up each and every week on SmackDown. Now, we also had the Fatal 5-Way Women's match that was announced last week to determine the new number one contender. I believe it was Becky Lynch, it was Tamina, it was Charlotte, it was Carmella, and Natty, I believe. And the match never even got underway. They all started brawling right away. Natalya went through a table. I think Charlotte powerbombed her on the outside of the ring. A complete, total Pier 6 brawl, as Gorilla Monsoon would like to say. And that prompted Shane McMahon to come out to the ring. And we all heard the rumors last week. I even made mention of it in my last commentary that WWE has announced that they are going to do a women's Money in the Bank ladder match at Money in the Bank, and I had suggested that maybe they would actually have a winner in the Fatal 5-Way, and then all of the losers would be put into the Money in the Bank match, but they went ahead and just threw the whole match out. The match never even got started. Referee never rang the bell. All the girls are just fighting with each other. So Shane says, fine, how about we put you all in the Money in the Bank ladder match? Now, I'm all for this idea because you might as well. They're trying to make the women's division a big deal. We've seen Hell in the Cell matches. We've seen Falls Count Anywhere matches. You might as well throw a Money in the Bank match at us as well. Why the hell not, right? But I do think there is some potential for problems in this. And one of those problems is the entire women's division is involved in it. Every single woman on SmackDown is in this match, and it's just, you know, there's nobody left out. They're all involved, and, you know, I don't know. And I don't know how good it can be compared to the men. Obviously, this will come earlier on in the card, and WWE, I would hope, gives the women some time to do some things in there, but we're not going to see anything too crazy. We're not going to see too many nasty bumps. Hopefully, none of these women will break a nose or lose any teeth or fall out on the outside of the ring and break an arm or something like that while taking bumps. And as far as who wins it, I got to go with Natty at this point. I mean, she's the one that I've been saying should win the title next of all the women. I think she should be the one to win it. I also think whoever wins this won't hang on to the briefcase too long, not for like 6 months or anything like that, because there's just not enough time. There's not enough women on the roster to drag something like that out. So if Natalya winds up winning, I think she cashes in at SummerSlam. Are they doing a July pay-per-view for SmackDown? I don't even fucking know, to be honest with you. These pay-per-views are so confusing to me. You guys have heard me confuse myself in recent weeks over these pay-per-views. I can't figure out who has what and which pay-per-view goes with which brand and all this shit. So if they do a July pay-per-view, maybe it could happen there, but maybe SummerSlam is a better bet. Maybe there's another multi-woman title match at SummerSlam, or maybe we get a babyface match between Charlotte and Naomi, a really hard-fought battle, and Charlotte wins the title, and then Natalya comes in and cashes in the briefcase on her, setting up their big feud, so that could be possible. I'm wondering what the WWE does if this match is a failure, if for any reason this match really sucks, or if for any reason WWE just decides it's something they don't want to do again. What do they do next year when Money in the Bank rolls around again? How do they acknowledge this? If they don't want to do the match, what do they tell the fans? Oh, we're not doing it this year because last year it sucked. So the girls really have to come through here if they want to make this a regular thing every year in WWE. So I'm rooting hard for all of them that they can actually make this match work. I'm nervous about it. I've agreed with the idea ever since it was rumored. I talked about this in a Q&A like a year ago when somebody asked me, and I'm like, of course I'd be behind that. Why not? I'm behind anything WWE wants to do with the women, so if they want to put them in a Money in the Bank match, I'm all for it. I just hope it comes off well, and I hope the girls go out there and bust their ass and put on a good match, and it leads to somebody cashing in the briefcase in dramatic fashion sometime in the future. So provided all that goes well, the match is good, the cash-in has a nice payoff and is a lot of fun, I think this can be something that we will see every year. Other than that, the only other thing I have written down for SmackDown is Randy Orton's promo. He came out to cut a promo on Jinder Mahal and his rematch with him at Money in the Bank. I think this is the first time Randy Orton's been on TV since he's lost the belt. And I did read that he's been taken off of live events, so he's not even working the house show loops right now. So he's not really going to do anything, I don't think, until he faces Jinder at Money in the Bank. And right now, I don't see him winning that belt. I think they're going to keep it on Jinder for a while. Still a lot of debate going on in the wrestling community whether or not Jinder's title win was good or bad for WWE. I guess time will tell. But one thing I will say, it's been good for me, and it's been good for some other YouTubers as well. I've noticed that traffic has been up on a lot of videos talking about Jinder Mahal. My commentary last week, I uploaded it like 4 o'clock in the morning and immediately went to bed. I woke up like 6 hours later and I already had like 4,000 or 5,000 views on it, which is kind of high for me. It wouldn't have been high a year ago. I used to get, anywhere from 7,000 to 12,000 on every single weekly commentary that I did. But after YouTube started changing things last year, my views have been down, my likes have been down, everything has been down. So when I see this many views coming this early, I was like, what the fuck's going on? So I click on my analytics and I see that over half of my views are coming from the country of India. So Jinder Mahal is actually good for ratings, at least for YouTubers. I don't know how he's doing with WWE, but I am getting a lot of new listeners from India coming over to hear what I have to say about Jinder Mahal, and a lot of other YouTubers are experiencing that as well. So that's kind of funny that Jinder Mahal winning the title has actually helped YouTubers like myself. And if that's the case, then hell, keep the belt on Jinder forever. I'm going to put Jinder Mahal in the title of every single video I do from now on. He's WWE champion, and who knows, maybe after his run, maybe if he successfully defends the belt at a few pay-per-views, we can actually forget about the fact that this guy was a complete and total utter jobber on Monday Night Raw and in the WWE for the past several years. To me, I'm just rooting for it. I just hope it works. You can't go back and change the decision now. You can't go back and redo Backlash. He's champ. All you got to do is hope for the best and wish Jinder luck. He's a cool guy, too. The fans should not have anything against him personally. I listened to a few minutes of his interview with Chris Jericho on Jericho's podcast, and he comes across as a very cool, laid-back, easy-to-talk-to type of guy, and he's definitely paid his dues in the WWE, and they saw something in him, not only his physique change, which he claims is just diet and exercise. At least the silver lining in this, in my opinion, is that the fans were already sick of Randy Orton. None of us like to see him win the belt the way he did at WrestleMania and taking it off of Bray Wyatt like that. So Randy Orton being Jinder Mahal's opponent right now, I think is good for Jinder, because as much as some fans might hate Jinder Mahal being WWE champion, they might hate Randy Orton being champion even worse. So that is going to bode well, I think, for Jinder Mahal successfully retaining the title at Money in the Bank, and maybe he will not drop it until SummerSlam, but I think WWE needs to go further than that. I think he should drop it at Survivor Series. Unfortunately, I did not see any of Talking Smack. I was really playing catch-up. I watched Raw and SmackDown back-to-back. Didn't catch any of NXT either. Didn't catch any of 205 Live. So I will get better about talking about some of those shows here next week. Of course, I will be up here this Sunday live tweeting during Extreme Rules, and I will be up right after the pay-per-view with the results and a reaction video. My plan is to get that video to you earlier than normal. The last couple of pay-per-views, I haven't been getting that video up until 6, 7, even 8 hours after the pay-per-view ends. So this week, I'm going to try to be home all night. I'm going to live tweet. I'm going to get myself set up and ready and prepped. That way I can record some thoughts immediately following the pay-per-view and hopefully get it up to you before midnight Pacific Standard Time. That's my goal. So if you have not yet followed me on Twitter, please do so this week. I will be very active this week, and especially on Sunday for the pay-per-view. I only have 2 other items of news that I want to mention. The first one is Tommaso Ciampa's injury. This does not sound good, but we have heard that he had some sort of an injury. At first we thought it was an ankle, and then they were saying that he went down to Birmingham to see Dr. Andrews. And that's bad news. When you go to Dr. Andrews, you got something wrong. You got a torn ACL. You've got some knee problems. You've got some shit that's going to keep you out 5 months, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, something like that. So whatever is wrong with him, I hope it's not too serious. But the fact that he's going down to Birmingham makes me incredibly nervous. And it fucking sucks. Why does this always happen? Also, did anybody check out the Table for 3 episode, the latest one on WWE Network? It was Jim Cornette, Eric Bischoff, and Michael Hayes. Now, we had heard that Jim Cornette actually taped an episode of this during WrestleMania because, of course, he was at the Hall of Fame to induct the Rock and Roll Express, and he did a few other things with WWE. I think did a couple of interviews and taped one of these Table for Three segments, and it was him and Bischoff sitting together talking for like the first time ever. They had only had a conversation or two in WCW years ago, 25 years ago, and have not really seen or spoken to each other since, and it was really interesting. And, you know, these things aren't full-on shoot interviews. They're only like 20 minutes long. They're very, very short, but it was still really interesting to see Cornette and Bischoff there talking with Michael Hayes kind of moderating the whole thing. And they traded some insults, and they also acknowledged that they respected each other, and in the end, there was a handshake, and it was all happy, and all of that. And I'm a big fan of Eric Bischoff. I think all is forgiven now. I think Eric Bischoff can still be an asset to the wrestling business. I loved his run as GM on Monday Night Raw all those years ago. I thought he was a great character in WWE, and I wish we would have seen him more on WWE TV. So for me, it was really interesting to see him talking with Jim Cornette and them rehashing some of their issues from back in WCW. I think Jim Cornette told the story of how he brought in the Heavenly Bodies and he was supposed to shoot on Bill Watts. And then Eric Bischoff edited the segment. It's a story we've heard Jim tell multiple times on shoot interviews. What I did find interesting, though, about this Table for Three is that Jim Cornette just could not resist bringing up Vince Russo's name multiple times. I have never in my life seen a human being hate another human being more than Jim Cornette hates Vince Russo. It's fucking hilarious. And what would have been even cooler is if WWE got Russo to be a part of this thing. There probably would have been a fist fight. Like, Jim Cornette literally wants to kill this guy, and he just couldn't resist bringing his name up more than once. So my question is, why didn't WWE call up Vince Russo and say, hey, you want to come be a part of this Table for Three with Jim Cornette and Eric Bischoff? That would have been very interesting. So I found the interview very fun and very interesting, and it was really cool to see Jim Cornette and Eric Bischoff sitting and talking at the same table. So if you've not yet checked that out, go to WWE Network. It's right there on the main page. Take a look at it. It's not very long, and it's a lot of fun and very interesting for a fan my age to watch that conversation take place between those two guys, Bischoff and Cornette. I know I'm probably leaving out a bunch of other wrestling news. I'm sorry. I didn't have a lot of time this week to really discuss anything else going on. So I know there are some things that I'm leaving out, but never fear. I'm going to be up here in just a couple of days after Extreme Rules to give you guys a results and reaction video. And then after that, I'll be up in 2 more days to talk about Raw and SmackDown again. And I promise next week to get in much more detail on some of the other things going on, maybe some good Talking Smack interviews, 205 Live, NXT, any other wrestling news or rumors that might be going on next week. I will be sure to get into more detail on those in my next episode. So I apologize for the shorter than normal commentary, but I have got to get out of here. So you guys take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you again on Sunday night. Until then, peace.